Hey everybody, welcome back to World History. So we're going to go ahead and move on and get into our next section of notes. So go ahead and get your notes out and let's get started. So today we're talking invaders, traders, and empires. So we're going to be covering a few civilizations today. So buckle up, folks. Here we go. So one of the big things to talk about is one of the first empires arising. Now, more often than not, for a time, empires brought peace and prosperity to a region, but then that could all change when somebody else attacked, that empire fell. But for the most part, they were decently well in terms of bringing about stability to the region. Now, Sargon being one of our most famous, Akkad and the Akkadians actually did invade and conquer. They were actually the world's first empire. They appointed local rulers and kings to rule over the area as well. They were essentially just in charge of that region. Now, also in that region, we have somebody by the name of Hammurabi. Now, he brings Babylon to power. Now, he was a Babylonian king, one of those people appointed by the locals. Now, he wrote a lot of laws in terms of how he ruled his region. And he's actually one of the first to actually write down laws for his specific region, and laws that would then be adapted into basically every civilization that followed. He also led massive projects for irrigation, maintained an army, repaired the temples, unified the region under one religion with Marduk, the patron god of Babylon. Now, Hammurabi's code, this was the first effort by an empire to codify or record all of its laws. Lex talionis, an eye for an eye, was very much still a thing. So basically, it was very much you received a punishment appropriate to the crime you committed. So if you were a thief, you may have your hand or fingers cut off. Those sorts of things. If you go and kill somebody, more than likely you're going to be killed. Now, it's also here we start to get the distinction of civil and criminal law, two terms that we still use today. So with civil law, those are private rights that deals with businesses, property, taxes, marriage. They protect the powerless. Criminal law, this is offenses versus others, things like robbery, assault, murder. They limit personal vengeance, and it helps maintain social order in the region. So these are pictures of Hammurabi's code. His code, this is the full thing, has an effigy of himself, and then all of his laws and stuff that they codified written out on it. This is a better image of that. Here's a close-up. They used, I believe, cuneiform to write all of that out. So moving on from them, we have the Hittites, conquests that brought new empires and ideas. These were Indo-European speakers. They were native to Anatolia, which is Asia Minor, or what we would assume today as modern-day Turkey. They dominated Southwest Asia for about 450 years. They used the Babylonian cuneiform and ideas about government and religion. A lot of times when we move on to a new civilization, we see the best parts of the old ones move on to the next one. So if there was a specific fighting style or writing system that a previous civilization used, a new civilization may take it, hold on to it, and use it themselves. They were also very successful when it came to the military in terms of strategy, skillful diplomacy, and superior weapons compared to neighboring powers. Now, unfortunately, like with most civilizations, they'd fall. Now, they were one of the first civilizations to work with iron. It's why we refer to this era as the beginning of the Iron Age. Now, they discovered a lot of secrets to iron that were lost to time. They were able to develop a lot of spears and battle axes. This is an example of a Hittite battle axe right there. Looks pretty cool. Now, these were stronger and sharper than bronze. Now, by 12,000 BC, their secrets of ironworking had spread, and the technology had made it to most of the neighboring civilizations, so they lost their advantage. And eventually they were destroyed by the Assyrians, which is the next group that we're going to talk about. Now, they also resided in the Mesopotamia region along the Tigris Valley, so very much this orange area here. They did have a decent span of influence. And by 1100 BC, that included the entire Fertile Crescent and Egypt. They were by far at this moment in history one of the most powerful. They were also the most feared and hated. They used terror tactics, um, basically anything to get their way. They tortured and beheaded prisoners on a regular basis. They would enslave women and children and reduce entire cities to rubble with no um, remorse for the loss of life. They were highly disciplined, well trained. They used iron weapons. They were among the first to truly use a cavalry in terms of riding in on horses or other forms of mammals. And they were first to use siege equipment such as like mobile towers, battering rams, um, early catapults. They also had a very harsh and efficient government. It was a well ordered society. They broke everything up into provinces. Each province had its own governor that was then responsible to the king, who had absolute power. They built many roads to move the army, some of which we still have examples of today, and deported groups of troublesome people out of the empire. They thought, well, if we just get them out of here, we won't have any issues. They also had something unique. One of the world's first libraries in the city of Nineveh, under King Assurbanipal. There they stored 22,000 clay tablets written in cuneiform. Now, this is what we know of it today. It's still decently there, and that's also due to a lot of restoration and records that we've been able to find. This is what the inside looked like. It literally was just, you put a clay tab in a hole in the wall. That's what they did for storage. Now, eventually, Babylon would rise again. The oppressed peoples joined to capture and destroy Nineveh and the library. They then would go to Medes, the highlands north of Mesopotamia, which were up here. And the Chaldeans were an empire in Mesopotamia as well that were over here near what would eventually become the Persian Empire. They all went about, and we saw a massive revival of the city of Babylon. And the Babylonians returned to power for a certain bit of time. Now, again, like most civilizations, it wasn't going to last. But under Nebuchadnezzar, he rebuilt Babylon as a symbol of strength, constructed a number of canals, temples, walls, and palaces, and extended the empire over the Fertile Crescent, built the Ishtar Gate, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, considered to be one of the seven ancient wonders of the world. His death specifically caused a number of civil wars to break out and the fall of Babylon to the Persians in 539 BC. And we'll see that a lot with most ancient civilizations, is that when a very respected and well-liked leader dies, that's usually the collapse of the civilization, because it then becomes a power struggle, people start fighting again, and old issues become rampant once again. Here are some more pictures of Babylon. These are artist renditions of the Hanging Gardens. We don't actually know where the Hanging Gardens were. It's one of the mysteries of the ancient world that has been lost to time. And since it didn't remain standing, we don't know much about it. So moving on to the Persians, we have Cyrus the Great. He was a brilliant military leader, and he was very tolerant, actually, compared to a lot of ancient rulers that we talk about. He very much respected religions and customs. Typically, what happened when you were conquered, you would then have to switch religions to the religion of the conquering force. Now, they also freed the Jews from Babylonian captivity and returned to Jerusalem in 538 BC and rebuilt the temple there. They also very much believed in the idea of self-government. They figured, you know what, as long as you're still loyal to us, you run the day-to-day thing. We trust you. You got this. Now, as we go further, we then get to Darius I, who followed later. And by then, the Persians' empire was consisted of 20 provinces. Excuse me. It was there that we had the idea of the satrapy, or a province ruled by a governor responsible to the king, and a satrap who collected taxes and administered uniform laws. Think of it as very similar to the government system we have here in the United States. The role of Darius I would be that of our president. The satrapy would be our governors, which we do have, and the satraps would essentially think of it as your local and city officials. So Persian trade, they unified the area really well, and they had the Great Royal Road, which ran from point A to point B. They very much monopolized on trade. If you remember from American history, when you would have taken the first bit, you talked about the Pony Express probably. This is referred to as the ancient version of that because we saw a massive use of trading goods from one end of Mesopotamia to the other. Now, Persian economics, they were among the first to coin money, with the Lydians being the first type of money. And I believe this is an example of that up here. They very much believed in a barter economy as well, in which you exchanged one set of goods or services for another, and very much still resides within that traditional economy that we talked about previously. And we also have our money economy, in which you exchange goods and services for a token of an agreed value. So this is really where we start to see a market economy start to grow. And once again, we've lost the network connection. So hopefully it comes back. Sorry about that. I don't know how much that last slide got. We seem to be having some connection issues today. Again, barter economy, exchanging one good for another, whereas with a money economy, you're exchanging goods or services for a token of an agreed value. Also during this time, we have Zoroastrian religion, founded by Zoroaster around 600 BC. Essentially, they believed the world was the battleground of good versus evil, and that each individual had that choice. Their main spirits were the Ahura Mazda, or the goodness, wisdom, and truth, would win the final battle against Ahriman, the evil spirit. They essentially believed that you needed to live a moral life, and receive eternal life in paradise. And if you follow Ahriman, you're condemned to eternal suffering in the afterlife. Now, moving on a little bit, we're going to hop over to ancient Phoenicia, located over here. Now, they are the carriers of civilization. When we talk about the Phoenicians, we really associate with them the expansion of humanity and the true spreading of culture from different regions because of their manufacturing and trade. The Phoenicians were very much a seafaring civilization. They built some of the greatest ships of the time and were able to travel all over the place, especially across the Mediterranean Sea. They also developed the true colonies, or territories settled and ruled by people from another land, and they primarily traded goods, things like timber, cedar trees, and purple dye. The purple dye alone was actually really popular because purple, if you may know this, is the color associated with royalty. So it was a massive one that was used by them. Now, their settlement or colony was the city of Carthage. No, I am not referring to where we currently are located, but same name. And they dominated trade in the region for a long time. And a big thing to come out of their civilization was the Phoenician alphabet. This is the most significant contribution to them, to the world. Their alphabet, which is 22 symbols, and each represents a single basic sound. Our modern day alphabet is based off of this. If you've noticed, Phoenician is very similar to the word phonetic. The Phoenician alphabet very much helps us with that phonetic sayings of words. Now, eventually the Greeks would take this language and modify it and add vowels. Now, it was fairly easy to learn, actually. And if you look at here, it's a pretty simple language once you get the hang of it. This is circa roughly 1200 BC in terms of timing. All right, that is going to do it for notes for today. I'll see you all next time. Bye, everyone.